Shadow of the Tomb Raider is upon us, and this is the third game in Lara Croft's Origins trilogy. So we're closing off her story from the start, and we're going to be streaming about an hour of Shadow of the Tomb Raider from the beginning. And here to do that with me is Senior Brand Director Rich Briggs from Square Enix.
How are you, Michael?
Doing all right.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you as well. So yeah, we're going to be jumping into the beginning of the game. Could you kind of lay the groundwork for what's going on with Shadow of the Tomb Raider?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, this is the conclusion to Lara Croft's origin story. And so we look at this as her defining moment. And this is Lara Croft at her most capable, her most calculating ever. And so since we've given her more skills than ever before, we have to up the stakes across the board. So when you're talking about combat, this is Trinity's best going after her. So you've got to have the best tactics like covering yourself with camouflage. You've got to have the best tombs, so they are scarier than ever before. Traps, everything in them will kill you. The world stakes are higher. This is Lara Croft trying to stop the Maya apocalypse. The exploration is more difficult. So really it is us taking everything just to the limit and giving Lara Croft her biggest challenge ever.
All right, sounds good, man. So do we want to get a little bit of that here
Yeah,
at the beginning
absolutely.
of the game?
Let's dive in.
Let's jump into this. Now I'm going to be playing, so I might have a little bit of difficulty trying to talk and play at the same time. I'm not too good at that, but Rich is going to be actually taking questions. So if anyone out there is in the chat watching, we have a couple people looking at the chat. So if you're curious about anything for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, make sure you say something in the chat, and maybe we'll pull it up and we'll talk about it, because we're going to play for about an hour or so, we have a lot of time to fill, and there's a lot to uncover with Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So you were mentioning earlier that it's available for those who bought special editions or have early access?
That's correct. So right now the early access is live. So if you have the Croft edition or the season pass, you could actually be playing right now.
Okay.
For everyone else, the game goes live on Friday, September 14th.
September 14th, yeah.
We are incredibly excited to finally get the game in people's hands.
Yeah. So it's going to be Xbox One, PS4, and PC?
That is correct.
And we are playing on Xbox One X. I believe I have this set for high frame rate mode, because I think we're only streaming 1080p, so you ain't go see the 4K on there. But I really like having those options. You know, high frame rate is always what I go with when I'm playing on a PS4 Pro or an Xbox One X. If they give me that option, I want frame rate. So.
Absolutely, and you can switch back and forth on the fly. That's the thing that I love about it. So I personally play on the high resolution mode throughout most of the experience, but then whenever I get into combat situations, I switch over to the high frame rate. So for me,
definitely.
I love that, that native 4K image. It is just so beautifully
really
rich
good,
and lush. It just makes the world as immersive as possible.
Yeah, especially for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, where you guys are going to Central America and South America, and there's a lot of vegetation and all that, and horizons and weather effects. It looks like I played about the first 5 hours of this game already. So luckily I'll know what to do. But in those moments, I was just like, wow, this is you really built out this world and really used graphical capabilities as much as you possibly could. So the game looks great. And if you can play in 4K, it'll look even better.
I love it, and things like the true HDR support, true 3D audio with Dolby Atmos. I mean, we really wanted to make the world as immersive as possible. And you mentioned the foliage. We've got better dynamic foliage. So when we took Lara Croft into the jungle, we wanted to make sure that it was coming alive, because we really do view the world as a character. And it is protecting its secrets. It is pushing back against Lara Croft, because she's one of the few people that can go into these harsh environments. She has the skills, she has the will, she has the intelligence to survive where most people would die, quite frankly. I would not last 5 minutes in the situations that Lara is in.
Yeah, even in the early hours, we'll see how many close calls that she ends up getting herself into.
Yeah, well, you can see she's already got herself in one now.
Yeah,
so
we kicked this off by trying to dig ourselves out of what is she? She's in a
She was in a collapse, yes.
Yeah.
And so the whole point is, you don't even know, and we don't explain, how she got to this moment where the tomb around her is collapsed. But what we wanted to do from the very beginning is just show you that Lara Croft is feeling very, very confident, almost to a fault. So she has separated from Jonah. Jonah's saying, hang on, let me let me call for help. And she's saying, no, I don't want to lose the trail. So this is us establishing from the very beginning that Lara feels like she's the only one who can stop Trinity. And as you're going to see later, that's going to have some pretty significant consequences.
Yeah, she's definitely...
Foreshadowing.
Yeah, I know. Well, we'll definitely get to that moment. If you haven't seen it already, I know that even if you don't have the game yet, you may have seen kind of what happens in the early hours. But I really get the feeling that Lara's increasingly stubborn. As I mean, she's always had that drive to like figure out what Trinity's up to and like seek out these ancient relics and all that. But I feel like in Shadow here in particular, she's like, she's like, no, I'm doing this my way, and I'm not even gonna listen to Jonah.
It is. There's a little bit of that confidence that I was talking about. There's a little bit of that stubbornness in there. Part of it you can see is justified though. Lara has been through so much, so she really is one of the few people in the world that can stop Trinity. But what we're trying to showcase in Shadow of the Tomb Raider is that it's gotten almost to a fault.
Right.
And so as you mentioned, Lara's going to make a decision about taking the artifact later that is going to trigger the Maya apocalypse. And that is a result of her feeling like, I have to do this. I have to be the one to stop Trinity. And I love across the narrative these moments where you will get her even butting up against Jonah. You know, Jonah, who's been there for her for so long, one of her dearest friends. The fact that this game strains even their relationship, I think, is very telling about where Lara is in her narrative growth.
Yeah, definitely. We have a questions document where we're pulling some questions from.
We've got one here. So it says, what is the process like when building out this world, working to create places with cultural accuracy?
Yeah.
So when we're building out the world like we talked about, it is, absolutely trying to make it as immersive an experience as possible. We also want to make sure that we call it sort of Googleable myths. We want it to feel like it's rooted in history, rooted in culture, but not necessarily historically accurate.
Right.
It's about supporting the narrative that we want to tell. But we did send the team to Mexico. We did work with a cultural consultation group. We worked with a historian. So we do want to make sure that it feels, even if not exactly what happened, that it could have happened.
Yeah, like it comes from a place of authenticity. Like
exactly,
you'll have a lot of. I noticed too when playing is like there's a lot of like Spanish. Everyone's like speaking Spanish and that. And there's also a mode where you can have the characters speak Spanish as well.
Yes, so the immersion mode will allow you to not have the subtitles or have people speak in English when they're interacting with Lara. So the idea is that it really just tries to draw you into the world even more.
Yeah, that's pretty cool for me. Like seeing different cultures like represented in these games. So having that kind of cultural accuracy or a sound foundation to build off of, I think is a lot of people will appreciate. So
great.
And I think that like we're not going to be able to make it to Paititi, but I've heard that's the place to be. So
it is. And Paititi, we actually have a video online that shows a little bit of a walkthrough of Paititi. It's not much of it, even though it's a 10-minute video. It's still only showing a sliver of what's in Paititi because it is the biggest hub that we've ever delivered in a Tomb Raider game. And for all you guys that are out there looking to do the 100% completion, that is when you're going to spend the majority of your time. I mean, there's just dozens of hours of gameplay. It's a 30+ hour experience overall, and Paititi has just a wealth of side quests and challenge tombs and collectibles. There's so much to do there.
Yeah, it's not necessarily open world for those who may not be familiar with where this new trilogy has gone. It's not necessarily open world, but there are like big hub worlds where you do take quests and you kind of branch off. Almost like Metroidvania-ish. I know people use those words for games where you kind of like go along branching paths for different like progression and stuff like that. And we saw God of War do that when it came back around this year.
Yeah, so, to the lake. I love that portion because what we try and do is make sure that you've got a roller coaster of a narrative. That core campaign. You always know from one moment to the next what your next story beat is, but then we can pause the narrative. And we try and do it in a relatively believable way. Some people say, well, hey, the Maya apocalypse is coming. Why are you stopping to collect a bunch of, a bunch of things in Paititi? But we try and make it believable where the side quests that you're doing and the challenge tombs that you're exploring, these are all giving you either knowledge or experience or artifacts or even weapons that you can then use to make Lara stronger and make her, more prepared for that final confrontation with Trinity. And we do have another question. It says, your series has some of the cool death scenes. Who's coming up with all the gory deaths of Lara, and why do you like it so much? Well,
don't put words in his mouth.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that we like it so much, but one of the things that we want to do is make sure that that survival has its consequences. We've been asked to turn on subtitles. Is that something that we want to do?
That is definitely, yeah. That is a good thing. Oh, while we're at it.
So while you're doing, sorry.
Oh no, while we're at it, we can probably take a look at some other things here.
Oh yeah, the difficult, and I'll get back to answering that question in just a minute. But yeah,
graphics,
we can look at the. You can see you've got the high frame rate on, but as we were saying, you can switch back and forth at any time between high resolution and high frame rate. So if you're in high frame rate, it's 1080p, but it unlocks the frame rate, so we target 60 frames per second across the experience. And then if you're in high resolution, then you're at native 4K, and we lock it at 30K, at 30 frames per second, because we're just throwing all the bells and whistles at it. And then you're making a few changes, but we also, after we turn on the subtitles, can show the difficulty mode, because that's one of the other things that we really took as a fan request. We have individual difficulty sliders now. So not just the overall difficulty, which you can of course change, but you can adjust the combat, you can adjust the platforming, the exploration, and the puzzles independently. So if you want enemies who are giving you a huge challenge and no regenerating health, you can turn the combat, all the way up. But if you want Lara to give you more hints, then she'll talk to you through the puzzles and kind of guide you in the direction of where you want to go. And then specifically, there's a group called Growl, get rid of white ledges. You can turn off all of the white markings in the environment on the exploration. So if you want to be truly lost in the environment like Lara would be, this will just take away the navigation. And there's a bunch of other stuff that's impacted, but again, it's all about customizing the experience, whether from the graphic presentation or from the difficulty perspective.
Yeah, I would like to see more games do that type of thing, because there are, like, for me, it's maybe I have a little bit of trouble kind of like scanning the environment for like exactly where to go. I mean, and having those white markings, like those subtle hints of like, oh, I need to jump here, or like this is the golden path to get to my objective. I like having those things, but I also like raising the combat difficulty. I think that's probably because I'm so good at games.
You are just amazing.
But yeah, I like having that challenge, especially in something where there's a lot of stealth elements. There's a lot of consequences to like kind of messing up stealth elements. So I would like, when I play this, I would go hard on that, and maybe normal or easy on the exploration stuff. So yeah, and it depends on like how you want to play. It's good to have those options.
You are all set, because you can just tweak all of those individually. And then I will get back to the gory death. So again, saying that it's not that we like it so much, but we do want you to feel like survival has consequences. And Lara is trapped in survival situations, and the consequence of failing at times can be very gory. So it's never meant to be gratuitous, but it is meant to give you a little bit of that shock, that visceral, okay, wow, the stakes are really high when I mess up.
Yeah. When I was playing it, like, of course, when you try and solve these puzzles, or when you're trying to do like the jumping sequences and stuff like that, of course, you're gonna die a few times. But I was like taken aback by like those things. Like, oh damn, I don't know if I want to see Lara like that.
We want you to not want to have Lara die, right? You're on an adventure with Lara. You should be struggling to succeed.
I know, yeah, but I'm gonna do my best to make sure that we don't see any of those.
I think you can do it, Michael. I think you can do it.
Cool. All right, so here we're in Cozumel, Mexico, and during Day of the Dead festivities. This kind of calls back to when we were talking about working with cultural consultants and trying to build a world that's grounded in something that feels real and is real.
Yeah, and we think that scenes like this, not just from the perspective of a higher degree of immersion and authenticity and sort of grounding the world, we also use it to showcase some of Lara's character development, because you'll see a couple lines here where she says, I'm not very good with crowds, or you just see how she doesn't really interact with people. And this actually has longer themes throughout the game, where over the course of these last couple of years that Lara has been, engaging, and chasing Trinity, and ever since the 2013 reboot, if you think about what's happened in Lara's life, she's spent more time around the dead than the living. If you think about, the fact that she's in tombs, places where people haven't been, for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And yes, she has people in her life like Jonah, but she's also lost so many people. It's harder for her to form relationships and get close to people. And so this is one of the things that we love to draw out, because over the course of the narrative, in particular when you get to Paititi, like you mentioned, Lara will have to start having these, these human interactions that she's not used to, and the way she deals with that and the way she deals with some situations she's in with Jonah are very telling about her development.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. So here in Constable, Mexico, we're trying to track down Dominguez.
Yes, Dr. Dominguez, and so he is, you'll find, the actual leader of Trinity. He was a person of interest when you start the game, but Lara realizes that and you find as you're following him just through the way that he's talking to people and the dig that he is on, Lara's telling Jonah that, hey, this guy, I think he's leading Trinity. Like she now thinks that, spoiler alert, if you haven't played Rise of the Tomb Raider, that he could be directly responsible for having her father murdered. And so there's obviously a very personal as well as a very high stakes connection and reason for Lara to wanting to find this guy.
Right. Cool.
And we have a question. Magnus Hansen was saying, is there any form of choice, or is it like the previous games? So this is certainly not a branching storyline or anything like that. Where we give you the choice is along the hubs, like we were talking about before, where you've got the roller coaster ride that you are on over the course of the narrative, and then at different points, the Paititi is one of the hubs, but there are other hubs in the game as well. Whenever you reach one of these hubs, then it's sort of your choice of how you want that that narrative to play out. Like, what kind of side quests are you going to go on? What kind of challenge tombs are you going to pursue? And then there's also choice in how you develop Lara. We have a lot more flexibility in terms of the skill tree now, and in terms of the outfits that you can craft and find. So you can really customize Lara more than you could in any other games to make sure that you are playing the way you want to. Do you want to play more on the stealthy side, more on the Jaguar approach, which is more aggro, more on the explorer side? So you can choose what skills you're unlocking and choose what kind of weapons and outfits you're crafting, and mix and match top and bottom of outfits. That's a new thing now, in order to choose how you want to play the game.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Am I going? Yeah, I'm going.
Yeah,
the right
you're
direction.
going the right way.
You're trying to remember. It's a little dark over here.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, so we're trying to track them down and see where that takes us.
Yes, and so here you can see that she's realizing that Dr. Dominguez is the leader of Trinity, and I love Dr. Dominguez as this foil to Lara, because when we think about Lara being at the height of her skills and being confident enough that she makes a mistake, she does actually recognize that. She realizes that she's the one that triggers the Maya apocalypse, and she wants to move forward and set things right. That's just in her nature. She's going to own up to her mistake, and she's going to say, I've now got to be the one to stop this. Dr. Dominguez, on the other side, he's, I think, a very sympathetic villain in that, at times you're going to feel like, okay, I can totally understand why he's doing what he's doing, and you're going to be able to understand his point of view. He's absolutely Lara's equal in many ways. He's just as intelligent as her. He's doing what he thinks is best for his people and for the fate of humanity. Now, of course, using the Maya apocalypse to cleanse the world, as you will, is, I think we can all agree is not necessarily the right way to go about that. But we didn't want it to be sort of this black and white thing. We want it to be filled with gray areas where at times you're going to be questioning Lara's motives and saying, wow, should you really be doing what you're doing? And at times you're going to really be able to understand Dr. Dominguez's point of view. So I love that conflict in the narrative as well.
Sounds like Dr. Dominguez is on that Thanos trip.
Absolutely. There are certainly some parallels where he is looking at it as there are sacrifices that have to be made for the greater good. And now, of course, it's his vision of the world that he's enacting, right?
Yeah,
so there's always that level of, okay, well, you're probably going to be okay, right?
That's why we're going to take him down.
Yeah, exactly. But I do like this, because there is that arc where at the beginning you could almost see Dr. Dominguez as being in more of that heroic role, but then you realize what his motivations are, which I won't spoil, but you realize what his motivations are, and you have to stop him. And at the beginning, Lara seems, like you said, a little bit more stubborn, a little bit more, hey, I'm going to do this. It's only me. And she has to kind of go through that darkest hour and then hit that moment, that inflection point where she says, all right, no, this is not the type of Tomb Raider I want to be. And she climbs her way out and makes things right. So she absolutely, is the hero and does go on that hero's journey. But in the beginning, it's a little bit more of a, gray area.
Cool. Yeah. That kind of feeds into what I was wondering earlier. Is that sorry? I'm actually playing now.
Yeah.
Talking about Lara as a character and how she's not exactly like a good person necessarily. She's not exactly villainous, but she's also not virtuous. So leading up to the release of this game, I think a lot of people, judging from the trailers and the clips that y'all were putting out, was like, oh, is she going to be facing consequences? Is this game gonna turn it around on you and be like, well, you've been killing so many dudes this whole time and not really thinking about it all too much. So that's for later in the game. But I wanted to ask, is that what the approach is, and in what ways are you trying to strike that balance between still sympathizing with Lara because she's been a character for so long that a lot of people are attached to, but also saying she's not the best person in the world?
What we wanted to do was make sure we were taking some risks with the narrative and with Lara's character development. And this is the end of Lara's origin story. And I think would have been a lot easier for us to kind of phone it in and say, hey, here's just Lara, and yep, she's good all the time, and yep, she's just on a straight and narrow trajectory toward being the Tomb Raider. But we didn't want to do that. And we wanted to challenge some of your expectations and challenge some of the things that you think you knew about Lara Croft and her personality. Now, as I mentioned, absolutely, she goes on the hero's journey. She recognizes that she has made mistakes, that her confidence is getting in the way and pushing people away. She realizes that she's been operating closer to that line than she's ever been before, and she lets herself make the decision about what type of Tomb Raider she's going to be. But if you look back to Tomb Raider 2013, Lara wanted to make her mark on the world, and she was trapped in a situation where she realized that when her back was against the wall, she had what it takes to survive. You go into Rise of the Tomb Raider, and Lara says, all right, I've got the skills and the will and the intelligence needed to take down Trinity. So she puts herself in harm's way for what she thinks is right. So now you go to Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and we wanted to make that conflict internal. It was very, very external leading up to that. There are still external forces pushing against Lara. Like we said, the world is protecting its secrets, Trinity is fighting against her. But her greatest conflict is not becoming the monster that she's fighting. And we wanted her to skirt that line. We wanted to have those moments where you're going to question what Lara's doing and question her motivations. Because then when she comes out on the other side of it, and when she does make the right choice, then that is what her defining moment is all about. And her being forged by external as well as internal factors is what makes her into the Tomb Raider that she's meant to be. So it's never a question of us not wanting Lara to be likable, but it is saying, yes, Lara's going to have to confront her inner demons. She's going to be conflicted at times. She is going to be faced with the reality of her actions having consequences. She will see the devastation that she causes by some of the decisions she makes, and she's going to have to live with that. And that's all part of her growth.
Cool. Yeah, that was definitely striking leading up to this. So, it's interesting to when I think that games nowadays they do that thing where you don't always play a completely virtuous character. So it's refreshing to see Lara included in that mix.
Yeah, people aren't completely virtuous, right? We are all a mix of things, and I think some games make it like, oh, you're playing the anti-hero, and they're like the horrible person, but you have to play them, because they're doing a good thing, or you play the shiny, oh my God, they're amazingly pure. But I actually enjoy those narratives, and I love the games where, and as you said, you're starting to see a little more of that, where the characters reflect more of who we are as people, which is a mix of both. And yeah, we make mistakes, and whether or not we own up to those mistakes and then set ourselves on the right course, like Lara eventually does, that to me is what makes for a compelling narrative, in my opinion. Ooh. That was you're flirting with the edge of that danger there.
I know. I've done this many times myself. No, I'm just kidding. When you're we have a mix of things. We have combat, we have exploration, we have different branching tombs, and all that. So when you're building out like things like this, where like you're trying to get players to like scale walls and jump and stuff, like what's kind of like your approach to designing these kinds of sequences in the game?
Well, and you want to do your double tap here.
Yeah, there we go.
So when we're trying to design this, again, a lot of it comes down to how do we make sure that the stakes feel like they're higher and that they're challenging you and challenging Lara in a compelling way, in a way that makes sense across the narrative. We don't want to, start Lara from zero every single time because she's been on all the adventures. Even little things like if you look at her character model, she's got more musculature on her arms and everything. She's been climbing around the world for years now.
Yeah,
she's really good. Like her grip strength. Her grip strength is off the charts.
I sure hope it is, because there ain't nowhere to go but down.
Yeah. So in situations like that, when we say, okay, how do we design levels? We give Lara new skills. You're showing a couple of them right now, where you've got the rappelling, you've got the wall run, you've got the rappel swing. All these things are meant to change how you're interacting with the environment, and show that as Lara's skills progress, the world is throwing more and more difficulty at her. Again, I keep going back to this idea of the world as a character. The world is filled with secrets, but most people can't find them. And Lara is one of the few people who can go into these really inhospitable environments and do what has to be done to survive. And so the secret of immortality, the secret of triggering the Maya apocalypse, is not just sitting out on a pedestal somewhere for anybody to walk up and grab. This is the world using natural and animal predators to protect its secrets. And so that's how we really approach. That's how we really approach the level design. Across the navigation, across the traversal, across the tombs. Like all of these things are about the world pushing back harder than ever, and that's how we think about the level design.
Cool. Yeah.
And you can see you're going into a tomb now.
Yeah.
Little foreshadowing with the rats running away. Even they don't want to be in this situation. But this is a great space to showcase one of the new features, which is full 360-degree movement underwater, which I love. It is a fan request on Rise of the Tomb Raider. We kind of let Lara paddle around on the surface a little bit, but now. We be careful what you're asking for, because we're going to give you underwater, but it's underwater survival.
Yeah, you give us this much control, we expect you to have to use that navigation now that you can.
Exactly.
And yeah, swimming is such a hard thing for games to get right. Whether it's control scheme, camera, or the way the character you're controlling moves. So I was. This actually feels like in a 3D space at least. It's like, okay, this is how swimming should feel in games, because I don't want to fight against the controllers in any way. So like later on in the game, is there what kind of other things do you do with underwater sequences throughout the game?
Yeah, well, and thank you. We absolutely wanted to make sure that the underwater sequences weren't like, oh God, I gotta go underwater, or you should dread going underwater, because you never know if you're gonna have to fight piranhas or moray eels. But yeah, it's meant to really give you that claustrophobic at times, at other times wide open, okay, I've got to explore, but it's always meant to feel like a survival situation. And later in the game, you will absolutely have more scenarios where you're underwater, never for too long of a time, because again, we don't want it to drag down, but there's going to be collectibles underwater, there can be resources underwater. There's even, potentially challenge tombs underwater. And you have to be able to upgrade Lara's skill with breathing, for example, in order to reach your lungs. So exactly. Yeah. So we try and make it so that everything feels like it's interconnected. Like, oh, okay, if I upgrade Lara's breathing, the ability to hold her breath, not only can I swim around more and maybe get the jump on Trinity soldiers, because I can stealth underwater takedown,
Oh
but
yeah, I like doing
I love
that.
that. So you get the underwater takedowns on the soldiers, but you also have the ability to explore further into tunnels that maybe have a challenge tomb on the other end.
Cool. Yeah, that's one of the things Tomb Raider. When I played Rise of the Tomb Raider, I was like, just how much exploration there is, and like the things that are on the other end. Like, depends on what you want out of a game, but in many cases, like these things are like rewarding, if not for like actual like tangible rewards, but also, you know, exploration is a reward itself.
Oh dear.
So we don't get no scary death looking sequences
that was just
there.
falling into darkness.
Sorry,
darkness.
I was getting a little antsy, but
well, yes, we want the exploration to be a reward in and of itself. You know, the traversal in the tomb. So you're in a tomb now, and you've got, you know, this idea of the counterweights. You know, you have to balance things out in order to progress. There are certainly collectibles off the beaten path. You know, sometimes exploration will be, oh, I'm going to find a challenge tomb. I'm going to find a weapon. The crypts, you know, are back. We introduced crypts in Rise of the Tomb Raider, and now they're as large as some of the smaller challenge tombs were, and the challenge tombs are as large as some of the smaller tombs were in Rise of the Tomb Raider. So everything got bigger. There's more of the tombs because we know that's what our fans are looking for. But that exploration is absolutely integral to the gameplay. And then we had a question in terms of the horror.
Snap.
Did you do any horror or tension building scenes like the one underwater? Yes, so we absolutely try and find that balance. I mean, obviously it's not a horror game, but what we wanted to do, it's behind you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go around that. Yeah, right there. Up
It's
and
really dark.
yeah, it's super dark to see down that way.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Yeah. I should know that.
To the left. Yeah. Then, so yes, we absolutely look at how can we build tension, in particular in tombs, where we want the tombs to be one of Lara's greatest challenges, and it also fits in with the culture, because this was, you know, a culture that celebrated sacrifice and fear, and we wanted to make sure that these tombs reflected that. So as Lara's navigating her way through these tombs, she should constantly be reminded that very few people can survive here. So yes, good question.
Just so everyone knows, my good friend Eric Tay here is messing with the controls on the TV, so I was not able to check out what was going on with that real quick, but I think we should be okay now.
Move the brightness up. Yeah,
there we go.
We're playing with. I gotta hand it to you. You're playing with super bright lights in your eyes, which is against an already dark place.
Yeah.
So kudos to you on making it through with only one death so far.
Yeah. Well, we should have a death counter over here.
Yeah, exactly. Ding in the corner.
Just one. Just one. One too many, if you ask me.
Oh, that's all right. It was good. It shows people that it's not recorded, right? It's like, hey, this is all live.
It's authentic.
Yeah, this is real gameplay.
Yeah,
it's not. You thought you were watching a cinematic the entire time.
Nope.
No, people. The graphics are just that good.
Yeah. This, even with like 2013's Tomb Raider, it was kind of like one of the marquee games in terms of like benchmarking.
Thank you.
Now we're going on to like talking about like the PC versions of these games, and then Rise of the Tomb Raider especially was like, okay, now this is like a benchmark game. So
thank you.
After all these years, I mean, I think like the graphical push this time is just like having those different environments. So is that all like a concern like through the development process? Like, oh, we need to have like the best looking game. Like, how are we gonna like be better than like, you know, God of War, or like was that Metro Last Light was like a very long. For a while, that game was very much like a benchmark game. So, is that all any like concern with the development team? Are y'all like thinking about that as you make this game?
I think it's less about we have to be better than this or that. You know, we all love games, and so from our perspective, when the industry as a whole has great looking games, we just think everybody wins. From our part, we try to make sure that the things that are important to the franchise really shine.
Yeah.
And so we are always looking to push, you know, the tech as far as possible. You know, like I was saying earlier, you know, on Xbox One X, you've got that full HDR support. You've got, you know, the Dolby Atmos. You've got the new more immersive foliage. But that's not just to tick a bunch of boxes. It's because we're saying, hey, we're putting Lara in the jungle, and that needs to feel alive. And we want to then push the tech as far as possible to do that, so that you can feel like you're on an adventure with Lara. And then we look at Lara's character model. We are always trying to make sure that Lara looks amazing. She is the star of the show. So when I talked earlier about the musculature and Lara's hair, you would not believe how much attention we pay to Lara's hair. It's very important.
This hair works, man.
Yeah, so it's really about what are the things that we really feel help us tell our story and are important to the franchise and the world. And Lara, obviously, the world encompasses a lot of things. But that's really where we try and focus our tech. So we're always happy to be held as a benchmark. We're always very grateful when people say that, and we always try and outdo ourselves with each game.
Cool. Luckily, I've done this puzzle before, so...
This one's a tricky one.
Yeah, so I played this at E3, and then I was like, no, don't tell me how to do this. I know how to do this.
I could see you figuring it out, yeah, but it's also good because you're mimicking the player experience. The first-time player experience is going to be close to what you were doing, yeah.
So anyone who hasn't started yet, here's a tips video right here. This is how you solve that puzzle.
Yeah.
Speaking of puzzles, who designs these things, man?
We have some really, really talented people, including one guy on the IDOS Montreal team who did a lot of research into what resources and technology and sort of mechanisms were available at the times to. Oh dear.
I just slipped off the edge.
I know, man. That was just. We won't count that one. We won't count that one.
We're good.
To what resources were available at the times, to the point where he actually had working like Lego and Tinker Toy models of a lot of the. Oh my God!
Oh,
yeah, you gotta be a little faster. It's all right.
Whoops. It's 3.
We're
on death 3
okay.
now.
Yeah, third time's a charm. But he built out, obviously. This is probably a little bit more sophisticated than you would find if you were to go, into the Maya architecture. But the idea was they were a very, advanced people. They built incredible things, and all of these puzzles and traps and mechanisms that we have in the game are theoretically possible using the tools that they had at the time.
So it's like thematically fitting between
exactly.
The puzzles and the actual environments that you are building along with the story that you're trying to tell.
Absolutely. Okay. And the other thing that we did is, again, in keeping with the tunes being, absolutely terrifying and deadlier than ever before, even the puzzle elements will kill you once you get far enough in the game.
Really?
So even failing at a puzzle solution can result in Lara dying. Man. So yeah, we have to.
I hope there's plenty of autosaves.
We have to up the stakes. Yes, if you're playing on any of the normal difficulty levels, plenty of autosaves. It's only when you put it on Deadly Obsession, which is the highest difficulty, then you can only save at camps. Yeah, so then it starts to, you want to talk about white knuckle experience. Like when you're like, okay, if I miss this jump or this puzzle, I lose an hour of gameplay. That's when you start to sweat just a little bit.
Yeah, because then, for example, like here when I'm doing these puzzles, I'm like, I'll try the jump. If that doesn't work, then I'll test something else out. Or like when the first time I was playing this at E3, and then before launch, I think a month ago, was like, I'm just gonna try and make this jump. I think that's where I'm supposed to go.
Yeah.
Like, okay, no, that wasn't. So I'm just like jumping here, jumping there, like falling all the time, and then.
And that's when the people who want to play with no white markings. That's what boggles my mind. So I just respect to all you guys out there who do that, but the idea of losing an hour worth of gameplay because you're jumping at a cliff and you have no idea whether you can hang on to it or not, that is hardcore.
I don't have time for that.
Yeah,
but if you do,
my hat is off to all of you who attempt Deadly Obsession across the board. That is it's quite an achievement.
Yeah. I remember when I would play like Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell or any of the Tom Clancy games that are like
those games.
Yeah, I would play at the highest difficulty because I don't know, there's something about those moments where, especially Splinter Cell, a stealth game, which Shadow Tomb Raider has a lot of in it. I think that, having guards, on high alert or having their sight lines as like realistic as possible is kind of like, that's kind of my jam. So, having that opportunity to do that here with the difficulty changes is pretty dope. So,
And you guys recommended that you play, I remember the feature you did, that you play Tomb Raider on the higher difficulty level. I would say for the combat, I think absolutely. If you're looking for a challenge, I think the normal combat is for people who want to be able to make their way through the story and not have too much of a challenge from the Trinity soldiers. But as soon as you start upping the difficulty on the combat, which again is great because you can do that independently of the other ones, that's how I like to play. I up the difficulty on the combat, but I keep the white markings and I actually tune up the difficulty on the puzzles as well because I like to figure that out without Lara giving me too many hints.
Yeah, it's when I'm playing at like events and stuff, especially at E3, I'm like, I know people are watching me, so I'm just gonna like, I don't want to stumble through these things.
You gotta put a little show on.
Yeah. Okay, we're probably gonna get into some combat soon.
Yes.
So we're gonna see a little taste of how stealth and actual shooting balance with each other. I really like using the bow and arrow. I think that's my favorite. That's my weapon of choice. Just so, like it feels pretty like satisfying to line up that shot at the right time. And like when you're pulling back on the bow, like, oh, okay, I'm lining this up during his patrol pattern. So we're gonna get a little bit of that, hopefully.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the bow, just as one of Lara's signature elements, I've always loved that throughout the series. And so, just like the other games, you have multiple bows, you have different upgrade parts that you can apply to it. Lots of different bow skills that you can acquire. So you can absolutely go full force into the bow. But you're also seeing some of the new combat tactics that Lara has at her disposal. So, hiding up against vine walls. Later on, you'll be able to coat yourself in mud, so you can have those Predator-style takedowns. I really love that because it shows Lara becoming one with the jungle. And that's one of our key tenets of the game, which is that Lara's going into these environments. She is, outgunned and outnumbered by Trinity, but she is not outsmarted. That she is going to make all the things that are deadly at first to her work to her advantage eventually. And there's actually a moment later on in the game where Lara is coming up against a jaguar, and she's at first taken aback, and then she kind of sets her gaze, and she's like, okay, I've got this. And as she's reaching for her bow, she gets attacked from behind by another one. She realizes that the first jaguar was just a distraction. And from that point on, she realizes, okay, I've got to become one with the jungle. And we actually refer to her, internally as the Jaguar Woman, because she is striking and disappearing like the Jaguar does and making Trinity feel like they don't know where the next attack is coming from. And that also plays up the fear in combat, where you can string a soldier up from a tree and his cohorts will see him and be like, what's going on?
It's brutal,
You can coat your arrows with a toxin that will make them hallucinate and shoot each other, really making it feel like the jungle itself is coming alive. And then one of the other things that we did is change it. So if you break stealth and you go into the more aggressive combat, if you evade capture long enough, nice headshots, well done. If you evade capture long enough, you can actually get back into stealth. The soldiers will lose sight of you. So those are the types of things that I like because it just makes it feel like you've got more options in combat.
Yeah, I think that I'm curious about this in particular is that you have a lot of these new tools like going into mud, hiding in vines, contextual stealth kills, and you have bow and arrow, and you got guns too. But the challenge with that is building levels that are conducive to using those things. Can you speak to like some of the design philosophies when like creating something like this we're looking at right here, which is an early level, so it's designed in a way to kind of teach you what you can and can't do. But later on in the game, I suppose that there would be a lot more intricate level design. So what's kind of the thinking behind designing these combat sequences?
Yes, what we want to make sure is feel like that we're scaling the combat along with you. So this is giving you plenty of opportunities to do, aerial takedowns, like takedowns from beneath, using the vine walls, using the bow, using the machine guns, using the explosives. So this is kind of a little toy box. This is basically, other than the first bow tutorial, this is your first combat moment. So this is your toy box, so you can start to figure out how do I want to play. You could have gone in here aggro, guns blazing, and you would have, you would have just as much chance of success.
Oh my God!
Yeah, now you've got some Trinity soldiers coming after you. You're going to have to be aggro for a little bit. But later on, it is about making sure that you feel like you have options. So we try and set the combat encounters up so that you could go in guns blazing. Although I will say it is much more difficult to do so in Shadow of the Tomb Raider than it was in previous games, especially if you're playing on the harder difficulties.
Yeah.
And you can start to use all the different tactics that you're learning. So if you want to play more stealthy, if you want to play more aggro, we try and give you enough options that you can do that, and give you enough combat pockets that you can do that.
Cover me. I'll check it out.
I will also say that there is actually a little bit less combat in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. We tried to find a little bit more of a balance. There's more of a focus. While there's still obviously plenty of combat, as you can see here. We have more tombs, more exploration, bigger hubs. So there's a lot more focus on that exploration component. And then we have combat. Probably it's about a third now. Whereas before, combat felt like it was more than a third.
Yeah,
of the
that was like the meat
experience.
of the game, essentially. So, how do you pace that out, though? I think that's something that I wouldn't say anyone overlooks, but it's a tricky thing to get, and sometimes it's it's hard to as someone who makes games, I imagine that you're just I just want to have all this stuff in there, I want everyone to see it, but how do you kind of make sure that you're leading them in the right directions and you're giving them a little bit of everything throughout the game without staying on one beat for too long? Can you speak to any of that?
Yes, what we'll do is map out, and you can see the soldiers are searching for you. You're hidden in the wall. Oh, that guy had a little problem over there.
I love me some vines.
We will map out the entire game experience. Oh, here you go. Good chance.
All right, I know that they see me. Oh,
Yeah.
no, I gotta get out. I gotta get out of here.
Yeah, he can see you now.
Get out of here.
Break sight. Yeah, you got some. All right. Okay, you can do this.
Oh, he's
Michael,
shotgun.
you got it,
Let's
yeah.
go. I really like the
He knows where you
shotgun
are,
has a
though.
lot of punch.
Yeah. There we go.
This one went flying.
Well done.
Oh man.
We'll map out the entire game, and we'll have beat documents that will let us see exactly where in each level the combat's going to be, the exploration, and again, it's about trying to take people on a roller coaster. We want you to feel like, all right, I don't know what's coming next. And we want to keep the players guessing, and we obviously have to make sure that you're getting, sort of your fill of combat. I'm what I call the red meat action fan, so I absolutely want that combat. I want that moment to moment. Yes, I want to upgrade my weapons and my bows, and I want to do cool takedowns. And so we have to make sure we still have that. And along the core path, that's really the one thing that you can't, avoid is the combat. You can stealth your way around, you can avoid some encounters, but you're going to have to go through Trinity one way or another. It's really the rest of the game where we then can find more of that. Okay, let's put a ton of exploration over here, that's completely optional. Let's put a ton of tombs over here that's completely optional. So that's how we try and find that balance where there's some stuff that you can choose to do and some stuff that you have to do as part of the core experience.
Whatever your favorite part of the game is, you can actively seek that
find
out.
it, exactly.
Cool. All right, we got Dominguez over here. He got our dagger that he stole the dagger that we stole. So everyone's stealing from each other. What is it? This dagger's got some mystical powers.
This is what they call the key. This is the key of Shakshel. And the thing I love about this scene is at first, Dr. Dominguez is not even mad at Lara. He's like, no, don't hurt her. He's like, okay, now give me the box. And that's what's happening right now. I know we're talking over it, so maybe it's a little harder to see, but he's basically looking at her saying, okay, now give me the box. Like, he looks at her like we're kindred spirits. You've got the dagger, I want the dagger, now give me the box.
That's the true sign of an evil person.
Exactly. And then when he realizes she doesn't have it, he's incredulous. Like right now he is saying, do you know what you've done? So he at first expected her to have both together, and now he feels like it's up to him to fix her mistake.
It's almost like he's disappointed in her.
He is. He's like, do you know what you just did? You took the key without having the corresponding box. And the key of Shakshel and the box of Ixchel, those things go together. And that's what gives you the power to remake the world. But without it, that's what triggers the Maya apocalypse. So this is perfect example, like we were talking about earlier, where Lara felt like, I'm the only one who can stop Trinity. Jonah was saying, hang on now, Lara, let's think about this. And she says, no, I have to take the key right now to stop Trinity from getting it. And that is what causes the devastation that's about to unfold. And Lara has to confront that. She has to basically accept that she played a large role. Now, obviously, if Trinity wasn't hunting for it, she never would have been there in the first place, so it's not like Lara caused it, but she triggered it. Like, she played a huge role by not stopping and waiting and that's why she feels like she has to right that wrong.
Yeah, so he's like, I thought you were the Tomb Raider.
Exactly.
I thought you had this figured out.
Yeah. So he's mad
disappointed.
At her. He's
disappointed. Jonah's
that
disappointed.
look on his face, he's like
disappointed by your worst enemy. Like I don't know how that would make me feel.
Yeah, I know.
Oh jeez. Oh yeah. So this sequence is pretty devastating. So,
yes.
Here there's a lot of you paint a pretty clear picture of the devastation and the death that happens in this town. But I imagine that's like a kind of like a difficult thing to do, where you're kind of like painting so much death around her.
It is.
So how do you toe that line between like, okay, we want to let the player know that she really messed up and there's a consequence. There are consequences to what she's doing, but also like I wouldn't say like making sure it's tasteful. Like that's I don't think that's the right word. Right. But something that's just like
you don't want it to feel
much.
Gratuitous, right?
Sure.
And you're right, it is a line, and it is, when I spoke earlier about us wanting to take some risks with the narrative, this is one of them. Because having these big, we call them, run out, high octane action sequences in the franchise. It's not the first time. In Tomb Raider 2013, you had the water one, you had the plane crash one. In Rise of the Tomb Raider, we start very early with the avalanche moment, But this was the first time that we made one of these high-octane action sequences actually come with devastation and loss of human life all around Lara. And again, that was one of the risks we wanted to take, because up until this point, Lara's not very good for tombs. She's doing what she thinks is right, but when she goes into a tomb, normally bad things happen. The tomb collapses, or she goes into an environment, an avalanche is triggered. This is the first time that Lara's confronted by these very real consequences and the loss of life and the devastation that hits this town. This town is one of the things she has to own up to. She has to own that. And this is also where we can really start to fray that relationship with her and Jonah. Because Jonah, as you'll see, is incredibly impacted by this, and he is, through the bus window.
Oh shit.
There you go.
Okay.
He is incredibly upset by this, and this is a spot where, if Jonah, who's been with Lara through thick and thin, is now basically questioning her motives and her actions, that things have reached higher stakes than they ever have before. And that also is something that Lara's going to have to deal with and try and repair that relationship with Jonah. So it was a tough balance, and it is tricky to show this in a way that doesn't feel gratuitous, but it really was necessary for us to show you that the stakes are higher than ever before. Lara has still got some growing to do in terms of figuring out what kind of Tomb Raider she's going to become, and to show you that if even Lara and Jonah are not on the same side, in terms of how they're seeing this situation, that things have come apart in a way that they never have before.
Right. And I think that now that I think about it, I think it can go one way or another, but when you start like the Cozumel sequence with so much world building and showing that like people live here, and then when you essentially destroy the town, I mean that must be like kind of like a tough thing to design.
It is, but it is also, as you said, as you were talking about earlier, bringing people into the world and showing that this celebration ends in devastation. If you're paying attention, you'll recognize some of the people that you interacted with in that earlier scene, like actually losing their lives here. In fact, as you come around this corner, you're going to see the kid. This was the kid with the sparkler that you had the optionally, to the optional option. That's a good one. Good job. That you had the optional option to optionally speak with. And so it's again not meant to be gratuitous, but to be that Lara had a brief moment of connection with this kid during the celebration, and all that comes undone, and that hopefully again serves as sort of a very poignant reminder of the stakes of what's going on in the game.
Yeah, I imagine that's a tough thing to kind of design, and also like trying to test out how people will respond to it is also tough, because you don't want to like show your game early and anything like that. So Yeah, I'm curious to see like how that carries on throughout the game as well. And then
does.
so when we talked a lot about the conflict between Jonah and Lara, and you can see it playing out right here, where she's like very concerned about herself and her journey, and then Jonah's like, "Yo, hold up, you just did this." So yeah, this is the first example where you see things kind of falling apart right here.
Right. Well, and again, Lara's doing what she thinks is right. Lara has been through a lot. She's been through more than most people could possibly deal with. And she feels like she is the only one who can go after Trinity, and that has blinded her to what's going on. So it's not that Lara thinks she's being selfish or wants personal glory or anything like that, but she believes that no one is safe. She believes that if she doesn't stop Trinity, that the entire world is going to suffer. And Jonah is saying, it's not just you, you're not the only one, and we are going to help these people right now, and then we'll go off and stop Trinity. So that's that conflict of Lara saying, no, there's no time, we have to just go, and Jonah forcing her to take stock and realize, no, you cannot just put this in your rearview mirror. You have to look at what has happened and deal with it. That's what's a really important message.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but I'm sure that later on in the game,
it does. And it especially when Lara starts to get like to Paititi and she's forced to deal with people, and as you have continued interactions with Dr. Dominguez and with Jonah, that theme is going to play out. And right now, this is Lara on her way down. Like, she is plummeting toward her darkest moment.
Like for her state of being.
For her state of being, and that's that inner conflict that I was talking about, where she now feels like she's failed. She's forced, as you can see, to look straight on at the devastation that she's had a part in causing. And soon after this, that's when we start that upward trajectory of her saying, no, I have to be a more responsible Tomb Raider. That's her defining moment, is how she climbs out of that.
Okay. I was gonna say something. I was listening to a discussion about Tomb Raider, and where it's we talk about balancing like Lara as like a good or bad character, to put it plainly, and then talking about how she hits like almost an all-time low and then has to come back up. It's very much about her. So how do you balance now, like a game that's about her and like making something that doesn't necessarily revolve around her, because there's also an active world that happens without her. So like when you go to Paititi, like things are happening without like her control. So do you kind of feel that throughout the game? Is that something that was considered like, okay, this is essentially Lara's story, but there is a world beyond her?
There is, and one of the decisions we made was to have fewer supporting characters so that we could really have more depth to people, and there's some people that we haven't really introduced yet, so I don't want to spoil, but we wanted to have a smaller cast overall, so that Lara's interactions with them could be more meaningful and we could develop them more. There's people that you will meet in Paititi who play a significant role in the story, but then just when you get to Paititi itself, it is the first time that Lara is basically finding a living tomb, because this is a world that's untouched by modern times. They have their own ecosystem, they have their own life, and how Lara has to interact and fit into that and be accepted by that culture is also part of her growth. So we wanted to really set Lara up to feel more alone than she ever has, and to have pushed away people more than she ever has before, because then the relationships that she forges on the way up, we think have even more weight.
Yeah, it's like taking her outside her comfort zone in a way. Okay, I see you.
And you get to see, one of my favorite moments in the game, happens when you get to the second hub. The first hub is one that you're just about to hit.
Kawakyaku, is it? Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, when you get to that village, there's this moment where Lara is having an interaction, which I won't spoil because I want people to experience it themselves. But where it's her and Jonah and another character have this conversation, and you can just see how uncomfortable Lara is at this one point, where she's she's never had, or not never, but it's been so long since she's had normal human interactions like this.
Oh, okay. I
that
think I know
aren't
what
just
you're
about
talking
tomb
about.
raiding. Yeah, that just aren't about tomb raiding. And I laugh out loud every time I see it, but it's also, I think, just it's a striking reminder of how much Lara has isolated herself in the pursuit of this,
she's been
quest.
she's been so like almost like tunnel vision in a way with like her father's research and like tracking these dudes down. So like when you do have to interact with these, because there's a lot more life and culture in Shadow than there is like Rise is. Almost like it's set up in a way. It's like, oh, I'm surviving this like harsh environment. And now it's kind of like I'm trying to navigate these different cultures and these different people. So yeah, now that you mention it, it's like, oh yeah, okay, this is why she acts in this way when we get to Kawakiaku, and then I'm curious, it's like how that carries on to other hub worlds. Yeah, there's a lot going on. So here, there's a devastating plane crash.
Yes, that was a plane crash from the very beginning. So now we are. So now we are all timeline all caught up.
Yeah.
So.
Unfortunately, we don't have too much more time, but I think I want to kind of like walk around, see a little bit of the vegetation, kind of soak in the world a little bit more. Because then from here, if you're going to play this game, from here is when things start to open up. You get to the first fire camp. You start to see the skill trees.
Exactly.
Then you start to get into like that Jaguar fight right there.
You get to crafting. You get to your skill unlocks. You know, this is where you've got some. This is the first. This is the smallest of the hubs. You know, we usually call these we refer to them as hunting grounds internally because they're the smallest. Because again, we don't want to just throw you in and have you not know.
Yeah, be like
overwhelmed. But you've got some challenge tombs that are in this area. You've got some side quests, and one of the questions was asked, are there any side missions? Absolutely. So of course, this is that first real space where you are just dropped into the middle of this area, you don't know where to go, and there's a lot to do.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I love about how we approach the world is, at first, you can see just everything is very, very dark and oppressive, and you know the jungle itself, there's not a lot of sunlight coming through. As you progress through the game, we actually make the jungle start to get brighter and lighter, and you have more direction around where to go, and that's also mirroring Lara's growth.
Okay.
Because as she becomes one with the jungle, she becomes, she sort of becomes a part of it.
Yeah, she starts to like understand how to navigate
the jungle, how to navigate it. There's a great moment where she's face to face, and people may have seen it from the trailer. She's face to face with this jaguar, and it almost looks at her like, okay, I'm not sure what to make of you, but I kind of respect you. So, so we try and have moments like that where the world is sort of parallel is a parallel to
like you said, like
growth.
Having the world as a character and something that evolves over time. That's just not just static. So let me see. There's a jumping sequence. I'm running on trees after this, and then after that, I think the fire camp is or
you'll be to the first camp.
Okay, cool. And I think we might
show
call
the skill
it
tree and then call it.
Yeah, because I definitely want to show the skill tree because that's definitely interesting. Let me take some eggs over here. Oh, that's a feather.
A feather, help you with an arrow later. Yeah. We should have made Lara grab an egg right there. That would have been good. Just
raw eggs, man. That's how you stay. That's how you stay swole.
That's how she stays yoked.
Oh, get it?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah. All right. So
egg yolks.
That was terrible.
No, it's good, man. No, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of very, very bad puns. We actually just started a Slack channel with, typos. Typos can also be puns, but like, we're a fan of that stuff. Okay. So I'm on the editorial team. So anything that has to do with really bad writing, that's so bad it's good.
Oh yeah,
I'm a fan of it.
Yeah. I'm into the dad jokes at home with the kids now. So it's.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right, here we go. We're in the first camp.
Yes.
Camp here. So let's check out some skills.
Yeah. The first thing you'll notice is that everything is on one screen. So this is what we were talking about before, trying to give you more flexibility. And some things you'll unlock over the normal course of the story. Other things you'll unlock based on how you decide to play, like where you want to unlock your skill tree. And you can see that you right now you're in the scavenger area. So this is more the exploration. You can go with the warrior, or you can go with if you go up, you go into the seeker. So depending on how you want to play, like the stealthy or the more aggro or the more exploration.
Yeah, it's kind of broken up
here.
similarly as the game is broken up. The skill trees is also broken up in that way. Cool. Yeah, I always go. I mean, I need help in combat because I'm going to play on hard.
There are some very cool warrior skills.
Yeah. So. What about these unlock ones? Can you tell me what some of these unlock ones do?
Well, some of them you'll get.
Ones.
Yeah, some of them you'll get over the course of the story. Those are the ones that have like sort of the book open.
Okay.
Some of them you'll get by finding challenge tombs. So we want to make sure that you're getting material rewards when you go out and find challenge tombs, so you'll get a new skill that can then influence how you play the game.
Cool. All right, so here I need to get my equipment. I need to tie down these ropes because my stuff is in that box right there. But instead of doing that, which might take a minute, I think we can.
You got to get your machete.
Oh, that's right, because there's a challenge tomb around here, but I think I need equipment to get to that challenge tomb.
Right. So you have to first get the machete so you can get your gear, and then once you get your gear, then you can get to that challenge tomb. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's let's see. Oh man, we're running over. We ran over our time limit. Sorry, Tay. Sorry, Jean-Luc. I know y'all got work to do today, but yeah, this is. I think this is where we'll kind of.
Yeah, it's
shut it down.
Yeah, it's a good, nice little. You can show people the promise of the first hub, stretching out the limitless possibilities.
Yeah. I really like. Soon after this, you get to Kawakiaku, and I think that I like that a lot because it really showcases like a village trying to like hold itself together, and there's like a lot of like good character, even though that's the first small hub world. I think it gives you a good taste of what's to come for the rest of it. So,
absolutely.
I think. That'll be it for our stream.
Yes.
And if everyone's interested in what you saw today, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is available now, right?
Yes, early access is live right now. So if you have the Croft Edition or the Season Pass, you can start playing right away. Otherwise, it's available on Xbox One X and PS4 and PC on Friday.
Okay. Is there anything you want to add before we say bye to everyone watching out there?
Well, thanks a lot for having me on. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and we're really excited to have you guys experience Lara Croft's defining moment. Stakes couldn't be higher. It's Lara at her most confident, her most capable, and she's going up against Trinity to stop the Maya apocalypse. So can't wait for you guys to experience it.
It's a lot going on. So yeah, you can, if you just tuned into the stream, you could probably watch the replay afterwards to see the beginning parts of that. We also have that piece on why you should play this game on the hardest difficulty, so go check that out. We also have the review on the site and all kinds of content for Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Again, this is Rich Briggs, Senior Brand Director from Square Enix. Got to get that title right. Here joining me today to play a little bit of the game and talk about it. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right, for all you out there, stick to GameSpot.com for all our good stuff. We'll see you next time.